Good morning. This morning I'm talking to Greg Meyer of Coastal Photography. How are you, Greg?
Great, thanks.
That's good. How long have you had an interest in photography?
Surf photography is my favourite, but I sort of go across the board with photography. I love doing landscape work and abstract photography as well.
Yes.
But yeah, it gives you a bit of variety in things you want to do. So it's not just all on the one, but surfing's at the top of the list, that's for sure.
Well, diversity is the spice of life, isn't it?
Yep, that's right.
Yep. So I was wondering, do you surf, Greg?
I did in my younger years, and I had an accident while I was surfing, and I sort of stopped it after that. But once you learn how to surf, it's probably the most addictive sport going around. I'd say once you stand up and you can surf, you'll do it for the rest of your life, that's for sure.
I have noticed that trend. I met a person when I used to live in Woolgoolga. His name was Len. He actually manufactures his own surfboards, shapes. And, he's probably 70 and yet he still gets out there amongst it and surfs every day if he can. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's changed over the years, like technology, and boards nowadays are just so different to what they were 20 years ago, so
yeah,
they're just lighter and just you can do so much on them.
And smaller too. You don't very often see a male these days, do you?
No. Well, the older guys get on the males. But,
yeah, I have seen a few.
Yeah.
Yeah,
the older guys, retire on the males more or less.
Do you have a favourite surfer that you like to photograph?
To tell you the truth, I reckon Mark Richards. And Mark Richards up here in Newey has such a unique style, and no one's ever come near him. He's a nice guy, and he's just, if I ever see him out down in Merewether, mate, I've got the camera on him all the time, And we're really lucky at the moment in Newcastle because I'll tell you what, on the world tour, we're supplying basically, 75% of all the Australian surfers in the top 20. And we've got, Morgan Sibley, who in his rookie year just nailed it this year and got in there, and he's 5th in the world out of the top 20. And then you've got Ryan Callahan there, and Julian Wilson also lives here. And then there's a hell of a lot of young grommets coming up. I tell you what, Newcastle is a factory for good surfers, and in the years to come, these young guys are just absolutely ripping, So it's pretty cool how Newcastle and Merewether in itself can accommodate the best surfers in Australia, and that's what it's doing at the present for sure.
So you spoke of Mark Richards before. Funny that you mentioned him. I actually went to school at St. Joseph's at the Junction, and we'd see Mark pull up in his silver Porsche, I think it was, back in the day. And as, high school girls, we were all like, oh my God, there's Mark Richards, let's go and say hello to him. And like you said, he was a lovely guy. He always made the time to say hello to us and acknowledge us, which as young, impressionable teenagers always made us feel special. So, yeah, a good guy, like you said.
Yeah, he still is, he doesn't have a chip on his shoulder, he's just a good guy.
Yeah. And so he'd be a fair age by now, I'd imagine.
Yeah, I'd say Mark would be in his 60s, but his style hasn't changed. It's just unique.
Yeah. And what's beautiful about that, I think, too, that it doesn't matter what your age you are, you're passionate about something and you believe in yourself, you can do it till the day you die, always never let age define you, I guess, too.
No, and not with surfing. Surfing is such an addictive sport.
Yeah.
And, from the time you stand up for the first time, you'll just want to do it for the rest of your life.
Yeah. I mean, I've spent a lot of time, as I said, by the beach and with the kids growing up, and the kid's father was a surfer, and it's something that I've always wanted to attempt. I'll get on the boogie boards and I'll body surf and that. And I guess I always told my kids, even got my middle daughter, I got her a surfboard. But I never gave it a go. So maybe after talking with you today, I might try and round up a board and get out there and give it a go. Tell yourself
Yeah,
you can, and you can, and you can.
Well, I tell you what, female surfing's just gone leaps and bounds too in
Hasn't
more
it?
recent times. Yeah. I see down on the beach now. There's so many girls out there.
There is.
So that yeah.
Nigel and I recently captured a few photographs when I was living in Woolgoolga, and they're amazing photos. There were probably more women out there surfing than there were guys on that particular day. And as I said, he captured some amazing photographs that day. And it's a good thing to see.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I actually went to school with a surfer. I guess I'll tell the story. I'm one to tell stories. I went to school with Luke Egan, and way back in primary school, he was taunting me, as kids do at that age. And me being the feisty person that I am, I reached over and stabbed him in the leg with a lead pencil. I shouldn't laugh about it, but we were kids. What can I say? And then he didn't come to school for a couple of days. And then when he did return, it turned out I'd given him lead poisoning. So lesson to be learnt was never to stab anybody with a pencil. And I mean, I would never do such a thing now, but it sort of made me laugh. It'd be interesting because I'd like to actually try and catch up with Luke one day and maybe do an interview with him. It'd be interesting. Yeah. I think I'll see whether he mentions it or remembers it. I'm sure he probably does. He may not even acknowledge me like that. Yeah, I'm not giving you an interview. Being a surf photographer and being around the beach constantly, what's the biggest surf you've ever seen in Newcastle?
Oh, I'll tell you what, you get the big winter swells, and normally 2 or 3 times every winter you get these big swells that come up with the westerly. So it's, offshore, really good, but we've been blessed the last 2 months. It's just been going off, and in the last 2 weeks, we've had some huge days down the stretch between Bar Beach and Merewether, and a couple of days it was 10, 12 foot plus, so it's been big. But Merewether is it's a pretty famous location for surfing in Australia. You look around, you've got Kirra and Bells Beach and North Narrabeen and Margaret River, and like Merewether on its day is up there as well, believe me.
For any budding surfers out there, are there, or someone that's wanting to take up surfing, are there some surf schools in Newcastle that you can recommend?
There definitely is. There's one that runs out at Nobby's, which is up at Nobby's Beach, which is only, it's in the heart of town, really. And I think it's Newcastle Surf School, and they have surf clinics and all of that. And there's a couple of others around, so it's never hard to find them. Just go to a surf shop and ask, and they'll put you straight on to someone.
As I've noticed, you can just sort of turn up to a beach location and you'll often see them situated there. Yeah. Well,
I know there's definitely one up at Nobby's Beach, but it's the same thing like with what I do. I because I do surf photography, I'll do individual surf shoots. Yeah. And then, there might be someone who's not the best surfer in the world, but you can stand up and you're shooting 10 frames per second, and it just so happens that the person goes down the wave and turns, and just before they fall off, the wave closes out over their head, but suddenly it looks like they're inside a barrel in pipeline for that one frame, and they can hang it up on the wall and go, that's me, you can see. So,
awesome.
So.
And so with your photography, I noticed on your webpage some of the things that you had up there, World Surf League, where we've talked about surf. You had rock shots and rock goddesses or something like that. Have you done some band photography? I also noticed you had another image on the left of a singer. I'm not sure who he is. He looks familiar to me.
Yeah,
Would you like to talk about those?
Yeah, they were a great band. I like shooting bands, but with COVID, obviously, I feel really sorry for all the musicians around because it's just been shut down, It's really killed the music industry. It's really sad, But I like shooting bands, and because you've got all the lights, stage lights and that, so you get different colours. And that's what I like about photography. It's just not surfing. And on my Instagram page, I've got Greg Meyer pics, which just gives a total diverse range of images, and not just surfing. And the same with abstract, hey, you can do so much thing. Be different. That's my other big thing is photos are always the same, Be different. because if it's different, people notice it. And when you're scrolling through Facebook and Instagram, people will see images they see all the time, but then suddenly one will go, hey, what's that? And it's a different shot, different angle, something different. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess too, and with what you're saying about musicians, it has changed the whole world that they live in. I mean, myself, I've always had a passion for music, but I haven't followed my dreams and aspirations. But now at this age, I'm starting to believe in myself, and I've taken this time whilst being in lockdown. Normally, Nigel and I would travel and do outdoor and adrenaline stuff, but I've actually taken this time and opportunity to write songs. So I guess, you've just got to look at the positives and the negatives. And hey, I might be looking for a band photographer soon. So it's about who you know sometimes, right?
yeah, that's for sure. That's like in all forms of work. It's who you know and more or less not what you know. But
the barter system, as we discussed before.
Yeah, but I think you're in my era too. I'm sort of 55, and I was sort of in my teens in the 80s, and that was the era of music, And
wasn't it? Yeah.
The Oils and the Angels and the Radiators. The list goes on and on.
Dragon was one of my favourites. Yeah. I loved how they used to get everybody up on stage, and I was one of those people. I couldn't help myself. I loved it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I always remember. I think I was about 14 or something, the AC/DC World Tour, the Back in Black Tour. And it was at the Sydney Showground, and we jigged school for 2 days, and I logged in there. And
of course you did.
Always, because I got washed out, but I always remember the beginning. They had this huge, big brass bell on a crane over the stage.
Yeah.
And Brian Johnson came out with this like sledgehammer, and he just smacked it, and you just heard the chimes from the beginning of Hell's Bells. That was just awesome. But that era, the Oils, like in that,
they were great.
They were just like power in those days. And then
they were. I saw them at Spears Point Park many years ago.
Right.
That era that you're talking about. So
no, I think. Other than photography, music is one of my big loves too, and I like all sorts of music, so, from electronic to heavy metal, so.
Yeah, me too. And actually, funny you mentioned Back in Black, because that was the first album that I ever bought. So that was the first one. And then I bought, for those about to Rockery Salute You, I guess the album cover was what I loved it, because it was gold with a big cannon on the front. So that was, I sort of went, oh, that one looks interesting. So that was the second album I bought. So funny you mentioned Back in Black.
It's a good question, Can you remember the first album you ever bought? And mine was either Feel the Heat by the Radiators or Kiss Dynasty. It was that. I can't remember which one it was, but
both great albums. Kiss especially. I'm an old rocker. What can I say? I remember even my first EP that I bought, and it was Split Ends. I Got You.
Oh, right. Yeah, that was a classic.
I guess for me too, music, like you're saying, they're two of my passions, music and photography. Having deaf parents, and I lived with them up until the age I was 7, but our house was so quiet. So as soon as I discovered a radio as a kid, that was my best friend, and still to this day, like I live alone. I spend a lot of time on my own, which I'm really sort of quite happy about. It's given me clarity, and a saying that Nikola Tesla says, great ideas are born in solitude. But like music is the one constant in my life, and I'm so grateful for it.
It's a good medicine.
It is, isn't it? Yeah. And it's also very good for brain traumas, and recently I saw something on Facebook and shared it, and it was a gentleman. He was an Irishman, I think, and he was a singer, and he had got dementia, and his son would go and pick him up, and when they'd hop in the car, he'd put music on. Well, this guy remembered every song word for word. It took him back to that moment before he was afflicted with dementia.
Wow.
So very interesting stuff. It is. Yeah. So, Greg, here in Newcastle, we have a number of surf festivals. The most popular one is Surfest. Would you like to discuss some of your experiences with Surfest?
Yeah, well, Surfest has been around for ages, and it's just one of the annual events in Newey, and I've worked for Surfest for the last couple of years. that's on a volunteer basis because I just love
Yep.
surfing so much. And you just get to meet the surfers up close and all sorts of things. But unfortunately, this year, down in Sydney, Manly bought out the rights because it was a qualifying series. So
Yep.
now Surfest, which was, has dropped back a notch. So a lot of the overseas surfers on the circuit, on the world tour, that won't really come up here now. You'll still get Sally Fitzgibbons and the locals like Morgan and Ryan and that being there, but I don't think you're going to see Gabriel Medina or Italo Ferreira or those surfers coming up here, you know, like with what's happened with COVID this year, we were very fortunate to have the Challenge Series, which replaced Bells, and that was held at Newcastle, and everyone was up here, you know, and that was awesome, you know, but unfortunately now we've stepped back and like Surfest will never go away. There's still going to be lots of good surfers. But as far as seeing, you know, the whole lot that are on the world tour, I don't think that'll be the case. You might get half a dozen maybe, and which is sad, but it's that's what money does, unfortunately, you know. So
yeah. And so, have you got any photography tips out to any of our viewers?
Yeah. Always shoot with both eyes open because people will keep looking through the viewfinder, and the best something might be happening to the right or left and they miss it totally, you know. So always be looking around and suddenly something will come out of the blue, and if you can nail it, that's the shot.
Yeah. And I saw one recently too, like try and proportion the photographs that you're taking.
Oh yeah. Photography is like driving a car. There's just the basic steps, and once you know those basic steps, you're right. And you know, if you can see behind me, that's a canvas I recently took.
I can.
But you can see, you can see the way I'm doing the interview. I could sit in the middle of it, and look what happens. It just kills the whole thing. But
it does.
Because I'm on the left, it's something as simple as that. So never put a single person or a person in the middle of frame. Always have them to the right or left.
Right. Okay. Where's a great location in your view to photograph in Newcastle?
Listen, as a photographer, you're probably on the best place on earth in all due respects, because you've got Lake Macquarie, and I live near the beach, but Lake Macquarie, you know, the biggest lake in Australia, basically. The waterfront all around there is magnificent. You've got all the beaches.
I actually live on Lake Macquarie, my front yard. When I look out the window of my camp trailer, I'm looking straight at the lake. Yeah,
you know, so you can start there, and then you go to Newcastle, and Newcastle Harbour and Nobby's Headland with the lighthouse, and there's just so many good spots, the Cowrie Hole, and just all old buildings and that around town and everything. And then if you're a country person, you just head inland for an hour and get into the Barringtons, you know, and get up Dungog Way, and you've got these beautiful country hilly pastures and that. And after rain, when they go green, you get some epic photos, you know. But I'll give everyone a tip. I'll get my camera out half an hour, or I'm down the beach sort of half an hour before sunrise, and that's when you get your good colours. I'll really shoot for an hour and a half, and it's first light and late afternoon, because that's when you get all the colour that really pops your pics out. So the hardest part's getting out of bed in the middle of winter, but when you go down there and nail a good sunrise, it's well worth it, you know.
Isn't it? And I know myself, like I'm always taking photographs, so I've got a love for photography as well. And everything you just said resonates with me, even to the Barrington Top. So that's where we always went camping. And there's some beautiful scenic places to photograph up there. I'd wholeheartedly agree with that location. Just beautiful. The Hunter in Newcastle has so much to offer to anybody wanting to come to Newcastle and the Upper Hunter Valley. It really is that we are really living in one of the most beautiful parts of the world or the country, if you ask me.
Yeah, that's for sure.
And sort of what sort of equipment do you use, Greg, or would you advise for any budding photographers out there?
Listen, technology. I don't like technology. I'm sort of old-fashioned, you know. I used to shoot on film. Stopped about 15 years ago when the Pasha Bulko got washed up on the beach. It was the last roll of film that I shot. Right. But what I used to enjoy was taking to get developed, right? And you drop it off at a chemist or whatever, or a photo lab, and you'd have a coffee and you'd be still wondering what your image is going to turn out like.
True. Yeah,
and when you
right.
got them, it was unreal going through and go, oh, wow, Where nowadays you just shove a memory card into the computer and you can see everything that you shot. So it takes away that excitement and anticipation of seeing what your images actually, look like. But as far as cameras go now, listen, they're so good, even mobile phones, like you can take top class images on a mobile phone, and cameras nowadays are just so good. A $200 camera can just produce a magic image, so it's right across the board.
I'd agree with you. I agree with you what you said about mobile phones taking great photographs. Often in the moment, I just grab my mobile phone because it's usually more handy than having to get my camera out. And some of the images and the photos that I've taken on my phone are the ones that actually get more likes. It's quite funny. And it's not an expensive phone. It's a Motorola. It cost $147. But some of my best photographs are the ones that I've taken on my phone. So,
Yeah, no, that's good.
You worked for Channel 9 for 5 years doing audio. What was that experience like?
That's probably the best job I've ever had. But I was sort of young and naive and straight out of school. And I just wonder what would happen if I was still there, because I worked in news, and it's a sort of job you turn up to every day and you don't know what's going to happen. And
that's sort of exciting, I guess.
Yeah, and anything could happen, and you get to travel a bit, and it's just the variety is right across the board, I mean, you can have your boring day standing outside a courthouse, and the next thing you're in a chopper flying out to some disaster somewhere, anything, it's a pretty good job.
Yeah, I guess, like you said, there would be an element of surprise in that line of work, never, like you said, knowing where you're going to end up, what you're going to do. You'd never get bored in a job like that, would you?
No, that's for sure.
Yeah, and so what can you think back to that time? What was the highlight of your career working for Channel 9?
I'd say the helicopter trips. I did the Commonwealth Games in Auckland.
That would have been awesome.
That was great. Like you just go over there and it's like you're on holiday, but you're getting paid to do it.
Awesome.
It was good.
And so I've noticed you've had quite a diverse career and an amazing life. You travelled to Africa and extensively by road. What were some of your most memorable moments from that experience?
Yeah, that was pretty wild. Like I was about 25 or 26 at the time, and basically did an overland trip, and we started in Morocco and just ended up in Cape Town and did 27 countries by land.
Wow.
And that changed my whole outlook on life. And to tell you the truth, I came back a different person, because the poverty is just off the planet, and like a can of baked beans on toast would be like a roast dinner over there. Like they give anything for it. And just the weird thing is they're all happy, you don't see much anger over there. And everywhere we drove, the kids were running up and all of that. And but did some wild things. Did the gorillas exactly the same as Gorillas in the Mist, the movie. Nothing different like that. And I think that the best was I went up. It was called the Zaire in those days. Now it's called the Congo. But I travelled up the river for 16 days on this riverboat, and that was pretty insane, like people bartered, money didn't exist, so canoes would come out with crocodiles and all sorts of stuff on it, and they'd be trading on the boat and selling them for matches and fish hooks. So it was pretty excellent.
What was the favourite place that you went to?
That's a good question. It'd have to be in Africa, and I'd say it'd probably be the Congo, which back then was called Zaire, but now it's called the Congo. And another beautiful spot was Lake Malawi, which is in Malawi, and that's a magnificent spot. There's just moon sunrises and sunsets every day.
Yeah.
And the Sahara Desert, crossing the Sahara Desert was pretty awesome as well, you know.
And how long did that take?
It took about 10 days, I think. The thing about crossing the desert, it's easy. When you get bogged in the truck, you just use metal sand mats that you put under the wheels to pull yourself out. It's a different story in the mud because mud sticks.
Yeah, right, of course.
So these things that you put under the wheels just they weigh about 20 or 30 kilos, but when you lift them out after the sand just falls off them. But in the mud, you can add another 30 kilos to the weight of them. And I'll tell you what, you sort of a case of beer is a must after you've been stuck in the mud for a week, I can tell you.
A hard-earned thirst then.
Oh, yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah. And so you said Africa. Was there a favourite tribe of people that you became fond of, or their traditions and values and cultures that sort of imprinted on you?
I'll tell you the trick with Africa is if you can speak French and English, you're going to have a ball, because basically Africa has got, other than the native languages, the two main languages are French and English. And that goes back to all the, the colonial times. And
of course,
over in West Africa, you've got Nigeria and Ghana, and they're the only two countries over that way that speak English as their second languages. All the countries around it, speak French. So
I can back that up, because one of the people I actually speak to is actually from Ghana, and a lot of people I do speak with use a translator in for the text conversations, but I had to wonder that actually answered some questions that I had.
Yeah, well, the trick with traveling, like a lot of people want to go to, I'm not saying to Fiji or Tahiti and sit on a banana chair sipping cocktails looking out of the water, but that's not traveling,
No, it's not.
The trick to, you got to go to a country where you can't speak the language, or they can't speak English or anything like that. And that really sorts you out, and that's seeing the world as a traveller where you can't actually verbally relate to the other people.
Yeah, I guess it makes you take in more, and your curiosity has increased by the language barrier. Yeah,
for sure.
And so we're coming up to grand final time. Who do you think will get up in the NRL?
You got the ARL, the AFL, and the NRL. So my little tip is for both competitions, like the AFL in Victoria, I'd back Melbourne. Yeah. And in the NRL, I'd back Melbourne again. So it's a Melbourne double. There you go.
Okay. Well, when I looked on your page, it actually said the Roosters and Sydney Swans. I thought.
Yeah. They're the teams that I follow and have for most of my life, but just as coming up to the end of the grand finals are on this week and next week, and my tip for the grand finals are Melbourne double.
I mean, I like the footy, but I'm there for the candy sometimes, I think. No, I shouldn't say that on camera. It probably sounds a bit sexist. No, I do enjoy the game. I used to go to the football every weekend. So, Greg, you've got an Instagram page. Would you like to tell us about your Instagram page and for anybody that's watching our program?
Yeah. Basically, well, the Facebook page is Coastal Photography, all one word, Ost, etc. But the Instagram page, I've got two Instagram pages, and one's devoted to surfing and just surfing, which is Coastal Photography, all one word, small font, _Ost. And then I've also got my one, which is totally different, called Greg Meyer Pics, which is all small font, just the one word, Greg Meyer Pics. And in that one, it's just a variety of all the different photography I do, from abstract mirror photography to landscapes, animals, just different things, So I've got one fully devoted to surfing, and that's the one that most people know me by. And then I've got this new one that I started about 6 months ago or a bit longer, called Greg Meyer Pics, one word.
All right, Greg. Well, it's been lovely talking with you today. Thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, not a problem. Yeah, not a problem. And if anyone's down the beach and they see a Coastal Photography image on the back of a T-shirt, that's me. Just come along and say hello.
I will. No worries.
Yeah.
Okay, well, have a great day. And as I said, lovely to talk with you.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Greg.
See ya.
Bye.
The opportunity to speak to people around Australia and the globe. If you have a story that you think is interesting or special to you that you would like to share on our program and to the world, please don't hesitate to contact us. Myself, Sandra at Little Big Ole Me. We look forward to hearing from you. Hope you have a great day. Little Big Ole Me.